to order the Thursday, July 8th, 2021 Traffic Safety and Parking Commission meeting for the city of Burlingame. This is the call to order. Mr. Wong, did you have any special remote video conference rules you wanted to recite before we proceed?
Sure. Thanks, Chair Whitten. So it's the same. We are on Zoom webinar this meeting. And so the ways to communicate will be once public comment has been open, you can communicate by raising your hand and we will allow you to, the chair will allow speak typically 3 minutes. You can send a chat in and we will read it. And I believe the other is you can raise your hand and we can allow you to speak for, again, typically 3 minutes, but that's chair's discretion. That's it.
Okay. From that, we can proceed to the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe the city's going to provide a digital flag tonight. And stand if you feel able and willing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. With that, we can proceed to roll call.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Commissioner Rebellos?
Here.
Commissioner Lee?
Here.
Commissioner Israelit?
Here.
Vice Chair Martos?
Here.
Chair Whitten?
Here. Okay, we are all present. We can proceed to the approval of minutes. The minutes, I believe, were distributed on Sunday. We've all had a chance to review them. Does anybody have any objection to proceeding with approving the minutes? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve last month's minutes as submitted.
Anybody second the motion? All right, I'll second the motion. All in favor, and keep in mind we have to take a roll call now. So proceed with the roll.
Commissioner Rebellos?
Aye.
Commissioner Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Israelit?
I have to abstain because I was not present.
Vice Chair Martos?
Aye.
And Chair Whitten?
Aye. Okay, motion carries 4-0-1. With that, we can proceed to public comments. Members of the public may speak on any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future commission agenda may do so during this public comment period. The Ralph M. Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the commission from acting on any matters not on the agenda tonight. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. The commission chair may adjust the time in light of the number of anticipated speakers. So I see we have a number of attendees in the audience, but I'm not sure if any of them would like to speak for the public comments. Has anybody submitted anything to Ms. Brewer, Mr. Wong?
I do have a public comment from Serena Glass that was emailed.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and read that. So it says, "Hi, my name is Serena Glass. I'm 10, almost 11, and I bike to the Burlingame on Mondays and Wednesdays. But there are no bike lanes and the cars go so fast on Rollins Road. My parents don't want me biking in the street. That way I have to go on the sidewalk. But there are big poles square in the middle. There is also glass bowl for some reason. I think we should put in some bike lanes and move the poles to the side of the sidewalk. That way people can bike in the street and strollers have an easy time getting by. Thank you very much, Serena."
Okay, that's thank you, Ms. Glass. It's good to hear her correspondence. Next time she should say hi to my daughter for me next time she sees me. Okay, do we have any other public comments?
Now, we have 3 other emails, but they're all for the specific discussion items.
Okay, so we'll hold them, and if the emailers are listening, we are going to get to them later. Okay, any further? So with that, I'll just give the people who are here a chance to raise their hands or wave or yell, and if I don't see anything in a moment, we'll move on to item 6A, which is the community BPAC item update. So I don't want to call anyone out, but I think there's members of the BPAC here. Any comments or updates?
Sorry, guys. This is Leslie. So we're going to hold our update just for the item of discussion on the Burlingame Caltrain station.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Hello, Leslie, and I guess we'll talk to you in item 6B. So with that, I can close item 6A, and we'll close 6A. We'll move on to 6B, which is the Burlingame Station pedestrian improvements update.
All right, thank you, Chair Wetton. And for this update, we're going to have our Transportation Programs Manager, Ms. Leisha Mai. She'll go ahead and introduce it. And I believe, yes, we have the consulting team aboard that she'll introduce. So, to you, Leisha.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. If we can give sharing abilities to consultant Stephen Tougmasian.
So they should already have the ability to share as a panelist. So if there's an issue, just let me know.
Right. So Stephen, if you can share.
Sure.
Your screen.
Go.
Okay, thank you. All right. So good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity for us to provide you with an update on the the Burlingame Station Pedestrian Improvements Project. With me this evening to present tonight's update are consultants Michael Fisher and Stephen Tougmasian from CSG. They're an engineering firm helping with the design phase of this project. The intent of tonight's presentation is to obtain feedback from TSPC on the proposed design. While I'll briefly go over the project backgrounds, Michael will discuss more in detail the proposed design. The Burlingame Station Pedestrian Improvement Project is located at the intersection of Burlingame Avenue and East Lane. It's adjacent to the east side of the Burlingame Caltrain station next to Washington Park and the tennis courts. Next slide. Starting in 2018, staff conducted a series of community workshops and online surveys with residents from the Lion Hogue and adjacent neighborhoods to discuss concerns of speeding, cut-through traffic, visibility, and parking in the area, and to develop recommendations for improvement to address these concerns. Through this process, the intersection of Burlingame Avenue and East Lane was identified as one of the locations of concern. The results of this extensive community involvement was the development of the Lion Hogue and adjacent neighborhood traffic calming studies and recommendations report. Next slide. The report categorized improvements based on their complexity and deliverability into 3 phases. As part of the recently completed phase 1 of improvements, the city installed a quick build trial features, such as the temporary curb extension at this location, aimed to reduce the crossing distance of the long crosswalk and to better align vehicle path of travel. Construction of permanent treatments was planned for phase 3. However, thanks to the San Mateo County Transportation Authority Measure A and W pedestrian and bicycle program, The city was approved to receive $600,000 of grant funding, allowing us to advance the implementation of permanent improvements sooner than planned. Next slide. With this grant opportunity, staff and CSG began reviewing the preliminary concept that was developed as part of the traffic calming and study report. Some of the key takeaways from this concept include the goal of better aligning the roadway, reducing crossing distance, and improve visibility, add more sidewalks, and provide traffic calming in the area. Next slide, please. In addition, staff received an alternative concept from community members. Key takeaway goals from this concept includes preservation of the heritage oak tree and addition of stormwater runoff treatment. And similar to the Lion Hope community concept, it also aimed to reduce crossing distance, improve visibility, slowing down traffic while creating a charming intersection. Ultimately, staff and the design consultant felt that this alternative concept creates additional conflict points between pedestrian and vehicles, and that the one-way loop will have a learning curve for residents, and new users can often be confused by where a vehicle is supposed to travel. Additionally, funneling traffic through an area that is traditionally used as a parking lot may not be ideal. While this concept aims to square up the intersection, we felt that the approaches still remain pretty spread out. Next slide. So keeping in mind the key takeaway goals from both concepts, one, to address community concerns, to enhance pedestrian accessibility, create traffic calming, preserve the heritage oak tree, and incorporate green infrastructure. Staff and CSG has developed a proposed design, which now I will let Mr. Michael Fisher from CSG to present the proposed design.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Next slide. So here's the aerial existing. I suppose it was prior to some of the striping improvements shown in one of the photos previously, but nonetheless, you can get a really good feel just from looking at the aerial. If you look to the right, you'll see the East Lane and Burlingame Avenue intersection is really quite a large swath of asphalt pavement with not really clear delineation of where cars go. The next thing you'll see to the right there through the intersection is quite a long and diagonal crosswalk. And then if you move to the left to the center of the image, you'll see a nice green spot. That's the heritage oak tree. So we definitely want to preserve that. It's quite a beautiful, beautiful tree. So moving to the other side of the tree, you'll see the entrance to the parking lot. So if you imagine yourself a vehicle entering that parking lot and wrapping your car around the tree, driving around the tree, the exit of that parking lot is basically just dead center of that large swath of pavement, which can create some confusion of where exactly, you know, the vehicle path of travel should be, right? Where's the delineated vehicle drive lane? So with that said, next slide. So with these four things in mind, we've developed, you know, and of course, everything that came before in this slide, all the background of the Lion Hope study in the neighborhood. In general, we've come up with 3 categories of goals. So the first goal is project goal for us today, pedestrian accessibility. So please note in these photos, there's to the left photo, there's no sidewalks adjacent to the tree. And then of course, in the right image, there's quite long crosswalks and diagonal through the intersection. So in essence, for a pedestrian to get from the west side of this intersection to the east side, it's really quite a long detour around the oak tree. There's no really direct path of travel. And as additional under this pedestrian accessibility goals, of course, we want ADA compliant ramps. We're considering high visibility crosswalks, and we definitely want to shorten up those street crossings. Next slide. So the second goal is traffic calming. So we really want to delineate the vehicle path of travel. We want that to be very clear where it can be somewhat ambiguous today. We want to improve sight distance, eliminate and reduce vehicle pedestrian zones, conflict zones. And then as Alicia mentioned earlier, we want to address any concerns of high speeds. Next slide. The third category we kind of categorize into additional goals, and that'll include such things as preserving the beautiful oak tree, incorporating green infrastructure, and improving parking standard. I guess I should say parking standards. Next slide. So here's our proposed design that we've come up with, considering the community study with Lion Hogue and the existing conditions. The green lines would be proposed new face of curb and gutter. The dark, they're somewhat the same level of gray, I suppose, but the new sidewalks are delineated here and shadowed in gray. The white striping that you do see in this image and the yellow crosswalks, that's all new and proposed striping, whereas the existing striping is screened back. The green dotted area, that's potential landscaped area. You can see that surrounding the oak tree and also at the exit to the parking lot. And then the purple dotted area there, that's the proposed green infrastructure. So that would be water quality measures. With that said, why don't we cycle through this, and I'll go through some of the details of the proposed project. As stated, traffic calming is a key goal. If you look at these two intersections, we've really kind of squared up the intersections. You see how we brought Burlingame Avenue to kind of a 90-degree to East Lane. That has sight distance benefits. It also, if you can see on Burlingame Avenue, both sides of the intersection are bulbed out. So where those brand new ADA ramps are positioned, those are bulbed out, which reduces the crosswalk distance. So you're really giving the vehicle a clear indication of where to travel from and through the intersection with maximum sight distance and minimum pedestrian conflict zones. Next slide. The new pedestrian facilities is a brand new sidewalk, basically. Today, pedestrians actually mimic this path quite closely, but there's no formal ADA compliant facilities for that. So essentially they're walking through the parking lot. So this will be a big enhancement to the area. Next slide. This slide hones in on the crosswalks and the pedestrian conflict zones with vehicles. So the red rectangles, that would be the existing. And you can see some of them are quite long. The red arrows, double-sided arrows, that's the new and proposed crosswalks. And there's still pedestrian conflict zones with vehicles, but they're much shorter, they're much more direct. And the hope and goal is that the cars are going to be driving much slower, as leading up to those crossings. So that's, I think we can go to the next slide. So this brings us to parking improvements. We'll discuss this a little more in detail, but you can see that the parking lot has the flow and the number of parking are stuff that we're going to consider when we go hone in on those, some alternative thoughts on the parking. Next slide. Right, so now we're going to go into kind of some pros and cons, if you will, or some advantages of the proposed design. So the first advantage, the circulation is similar to the existing conditions. The flow of traffic, you got the intersections. One of the key things that we've done with the parking lot there near the Circle 1, I may speak to this, I can't remember, sorry, but we might speak to this later, but the exit of that parking lot is a key design consideration here. So you can see how we really pulled it away from the intersection as best we could. Next slide. Improved pedestrian accessibility and safety. This is definitely one of the key advantages of this and goals of this project. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, the bulb outs do create a much safer and shorter crossing distance for the pedestrians. Next slide. This is where I was speaking to earlier. So number 4 is really a key thing, because if you recall back when I was introducing the existing condition, the parking lot really does kind of empty right into the middle of that intersection. So this helps us square it up, the intersection. It helps us give a distinct exit to that parking lot, and it reduces a lot of the conflict zones, with vehicles exiting. So it really gives them a clear pathway. Next slide. Additional landscape locations. So that would be, again, the green dotted areas for potential improvements to aesthetics. I understand that the recently improved landscapes just to the east of this project have been well received by the community. So there's a potential to, consider that. Next slide. Again, I've really kind of driven home the theme of squaring up the intersection, because that has so many benefits. But that's definitely, just as a side note, we probably should give you a percentage of asphalt reduction in that intersection, but we really are taking quite a large swath of asphalt pavement and reducing it quite substantially. Next slide. High visibility crosswalks. And then in conjunction with the next slide, which is a raised crosswalk, which both can kind of raise awareness of pedestrian crossings and also, give the car a sense of, hey, this facility is not just for cars. I'm sharing it with others. And the intent is definitely to raise visibility and get the speeds down. Next slide. This is the bioretention area. So that's a key new feature of this design. Next slide. And then, of course, this project will be in conjunction. We'll do a lighting analysis. We definitely want to adhere to, standard crosswalk illumination standards, and also consider both vehicle and pedestrian level lighting. Next slide. This project would entail, as one of the construction, elements, we'd be relocating those meters. Next slide. So I'll speak to this in a slide upcoming, but this proposed, as we see, we do lose a few parking stalls. Next slide. And again, that exit driveway, we did our best to separate the driveway exit from the intersection flow, but it is still, as you can see here, quite close to the curb return. And I believe it's just slightly within the 5-foot rule of separation from that curb return. Next slide. So here's where I can get into a little more of the parking lot design. And we've come up with two sub options, option A and option B. Option A above, you can see we're relying a lot on parallel parking. You know, kind of the main, again, just to drive home the main design elements here are, of course, parking standards, widths and lengths of a parking stall, number of parking stalls, the flow of traffic, and then of course that key element of the exit point of that parking lot. So with all that considered, if you look to the bottom of the page, you can see the current parking is about 16 parking stalls. Option A has 10, option B has 13, so right in the middle there. Option A, you can see for flow and exit, it's a little bit smoother. Option B, we do try to add a couple, 3 more stalls. However, if you notice at the exit of the parking lot, there's a little zigzag. Yeah, there we go, between the drive aisle and the exit driveway. So that's the main disadvantage there, or compromise. Let's see, option A, as you can see, there's a little bit of an opportunity, increased space for landscape areas. And I think I covered, they both impact parking meters. There might be a greater impact on option A. I think every single parking meter, or maybe there's 1 or 2 that are salvageable on option A. With that, we can go to the next slide. So this is kind of a next steps. You know, we're here to discuss and listen to the comments tonight, and then in September, October timeframe, we plan to take this to the city council meeting. In early 2022, we are going to finalize the design after we get all the community input. And then this is expected to be constructed in the summer of 2022. And with that, I'll open it back up to Q&A and give it back to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Michael. So with tonight's presentation, again, we're looking for feedback so that we can carry forward to with the design.
Okay. So the way we'd like to proceed tonight is I'm going to give each of the commissioners an opportunity, a brief opportunity to ask clarifying questions. I'll ask you to try and keep your limit your comments to questions, and try and limit them to 5 minutes or less if you can, knowing that we're going to take public comment. We're going to come back to all the commissioners at the end. So you're going to have all the opportunity you need by the time the evening is done to weigh in, but we want to just get questions across first, give the public an opportunity to ask their questions and make their comments, and then we can come back. So with that, Commissioner Revelos, I'll start with you, and we'll move through the commissioners and then go to public comment.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Could we go back to the overhead view of the new plan, please? There we go. Okay, so I only have a few questions, maybe 3 or 4. So on this parking lane, was there any consideration given? I discovered just earlier today that there's going to be a lot of additional parking becoming available with the new community center opening. So was there any consideration given to just eliminating this parking area, this parking lane, and extending the park out?
Through
That's
the
one
chair.
question.
Okay, continue. We'll capture all your questions and we'll try to address it.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. And then again, about this parking lane at the exit, would that be, that looks to me like that would really need to be a right turn only, because a car making a left turn there would have to look back over their shoulder, their right shoulder, to see the cars coming with no stop sign from East Lane and making the left turn onto Burlingame Avenue. So I was wondering if there's a turn restriction there so that it's a right turn only. And then my other question was I believe that that's going to be a raised driveway right there exiting the parking lane. So my question is, would there be a marked crosswalk there? There's not one in this draft. And I think my final question is, was there consideration of making that parking lane one way north and then west, and making East Lane through that section one way south? Those are all of my questions.
Do the chair, Commissioner Ayton, if you can clarify your last question about switching the direction of travel. So if I understand it correctly, you're asking if there's consideration with making the path of travel going through the lot in the opposite direction. Is that okay? And then your last question, the last bit of that was also making East Lane a one-way direction, and I didn't quite follow that one.
One-way direction south. So it would have been like the alternative drawing that I saw in the BPAC meeting earlier. And so I just want to know if the consultant considered any of those things, and if they decided against them, what their logic was, what they were thinking.
Okay. So I can answer the question about the parking, if I may. You know, when we go to the design, we try to maintain as much parking as possible. You know, to some folks, especially being near the downtown area, parking is very important. But we did, you know, show on the slide that there is going to be additional parking that's going to be added as part of the community center. I believe approximately 80 somewhat spaces are going to be added as part of the new community center. But even with that, you know, when we look at the design, we try to at least maintain as much existing parking as possible. The turning restriction coming out of the parking lot, they're currently at this level. That hasn't been looked at. So as it's proposed, there currently is no left or right turn restriction. And that is going to be somewhat of a raised exit, if we can call that, because there is a great difference between the roadway in the parking lot area and the sidewalk. So cars will have to kind of come up a little bit and then come back down to enter into the roadway. So there will be a change in elevation where it will be, I think what I'm hearing, it will be considered a raised area when they exit. And as far as marked crosswalks coming out of the driveway, maybe I'll let Andrew take that. I typically don't see that for driveway exits.
Through the chair, and you're indicating right there the question was right at the driveway. Is it right? If it's not, you're looking for a raised crossing right there? Just for clarification. Correct. Again, as
I'm concerned. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I there's so many parking lots around the city that where people exit over the sidewalk, and they tend to creep out over the sidewalk and not notice the pedestrians that are approaching the sidewalk. So I'm looking to enhance to remind them that there's pedestrians going to be there. Considering especially a lot of people are walking dogs there, walking their children, they're pushing strollers.
Sure.
Right.
And I believe, as Ms. Mai pointed out, that area there will be raised above the parking area, because the parking area is depressed. In addition, although it's not shown on here, coming out of the parking area will be most likely a stop coming out. Think of it as, you're kind of backing out of your driveway, but in this case, because we've got a lot of vehicles, we would install a stop sign there. So there's gonna be some indicators that folks aren't just gonna roll out of there. It's a little difficult now because right now it's flush with the street, and there is nothing, kind of a breaking point, a little sidewalk or anything. You're coming from asphalt to asphalt. This one you can go up, go over a curb cut, and then enter Burlingame Avenue. And we can definitely look at providing a turn restriction. We can see how it goes, because again, coming out of that parking lot, unless it's just leaving an event, you're not going to have cars just metering out. They're going to be coming out in intervals, and definitely longer intervals.
Yeah.
But it's something we can definitely consider once we move towards that.
Can I follow up to that, or should I wait?
You can go ahead and follow up, Commissioner Revelos.
Yeah. So what I'm concerned about is that that's going to be a stressful exit, I think, for a lot of drivers. And so I'm really concerned that they're going to be so focused on trying to gauge the traffic from the left and from the right, and trying to absorb what's going on there, that they might miss someone who's not really obvious trying to cross that intersection. That's my main concern. So that, to me, in my mind, anything that can draw their attention to that sidewalk there is very important to me.
Sure. And once we, through the chair, once we get into the more detailed design, we can look at options that can accomplish that. Take note.
Okay. Are we okay to proceed to Commissioner Lee? Commissioner Revelos, are you all right?
I wanted to know if the consultant had considered eliminate, or the city, or staff had considered just eliminating this parking area entirely and extending the park out. And if not, why? Just for educational purposes. And also, if there was any consideration of making that go in the opposite direction.
Sure. Through the chair, I believe initial, we can go back to it, we addressed the concept that was developed by some of the community members, why we didn't go through that. There were some concerns with that. Obviously, we're basically creating two offset intersections, which makes it a little difficult, because if you're crossing out one and someone's approaching from the furthest one, again, you talked about that visibility issue of someone not seeing. It makes it, you're just spreading out the intersections. Even though you're reducing the crossing distances, you still have those conflict points. Part of the reason we didn't look at something like this is you go back to the Lionhope study, where folks were, that was kind of where we got to that. They wanted to be able to maintain the parking, but do something about the intersection itself. And it didn't appear that they had wanted something radical. They wanted something just to focus on the intersection again, because with the parking lot, it still supports, even though we have the new parking at the community center, it still supports the tennis courts, the horseshoes, and the park area just adjacent there. So again, trying to minimize, although, parking, we are looking at some reduction here. We're just trying to trying to make it as efficient getting through there by some of the illumination, scoring up things.
Okay,
Yeah, Chair.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That's it for me, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Revelos. Commissioner Lee.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I had a few comments also.
If we could hold it, I'm sorry, Commissioner Lee, if we can limit it to clarifying questions, everybody's gonna have unlimited opportunity to come back with comments.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So clarifying question, did the study look at, the goal of this was to improve pedestrian safety and accessibility, if I recall. That was goal number 2. What we're doing is trading one crosswalk for another, crossing, what is that, East Lane. I propose that we design in the third crossing again, so pedestrians can cross in any direction that they choose across. Yes, where that stop line is. We still need a crosswalk going from the candy store corner over to Caltrain. And did they look at widening this long strip of park planted area along southbound East Lane, making it wide enough so you could land a crosswalk there? That's one question. The other thing I see is that I know the issue of queuing of motor vehicles crossing the train tracks is a big issue for our designers. So I'm hoping that the consultants look at making northbound East Lane only one lane going northbound, eliminating that left turn lane from the northbound traffic. Did they consider making the left turn lane for the southbound traffic, therefore giving lots more room for queuing of the southbound traffic? That enables us to put in a stop sign at the crosswalk that's desperately needed by the pedestrians. And this is a pedestrian project, not a motor vehicle project. It's for pedestrians, is number 1. So I'd like to see and find out if the consultants looked at the queuing, if a left turn lane was added, eliminating the northbound one, making it southbound, then we could add a stop sign. The other thing was, I'm wondering why all of the crosswalks aren't yellow school crossings. I believe they all qualify as a school crossing. Then I'd like to see, again, about being a pedestrian. Most of it is for reduce the conflict and reduce crossing distances and reduce speeds of vehicles. So I'm wondering if they looked at adding a bulb out to the crosswalk that lands at the Caltrain station, bulb it out the distance of like 8 feet, whatever that parking lane is, so that pedestrians are more visible. Yes, there. To bulb that out, please. Did you look at that? What else? And I rather like the idea of Commissioner Revelos that if we keep the parking lot where it is, but the parking lot traffic be reversed. So you would enter from the south end and it makes all the pedestrians very visible. And then you would exit at the other end. And I think it eliminates completely that weird crosswalk for the pedestrians who are by the park there. And the driver like hanging out on the crosswalk, trying to inch their way out to make a left turn or a right turn, and just blocking the whole crosswalk there. So if we made it the other direction, I think it's a way easier design and way easier for pedestrians. I would like it if they'd look at it that way. Then, all of you know, I'm a resident handicap person. I've been certified handicapped twice and been on a walker twice. And I'm not in love with that handicap stall where it is near the island. Me as the driver, when I've been handicapped, it would be really scary for me to enter into the roadway area. So I would like that handicap stall more like option B along the sidewalk area, not where the driver, anyone is dumped into the roadway the way that is on this design. And then the BHS corner, see the black car there at the BHS crosswalk? We probably need a bulb out there so that that car parked there cannot back up into the crosswalk at the school. I was wondering if that was looked at also. And that's what I have for now.
Through the chair, if I can address some of the questions that were asked. The landing area, the thin strip, as we called it, we did not look at creating that as a landing area at this time for this project, because those spaces, some of those spaces are dedicated as Caltrain parking as part of an agreement with Caltrain when they did the platform improvements years ago. And so we can certainly have that discussion with Caltrain, but in order to widen that strip of landscape area to create a landing spot for a crosswalk, we would have to eliminate those parking spaces. But we did not look at that as part of this design. Thank you for the question about, did we look at making southbound East Lane 2 lanes instead of the current one to provide more queuing? We kept the same lane in each direction as part of this design, but we can look at the numbers that we have for the vehicles that are going through that area and to see whether or not that's possible. And if I understand it, the goal of that is so to provide more queuing and see whether or not the ultimate goal is to make that a always stop. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. And not have the hump there. We would have a three-way stop there. Thank you.
And yeah, the raised crosswalk, because the initial concern is having an always stop there could potentially back vehicles towards the Carolyn intersection, which then could negatively affect the railroad crossing. And railroad safety is it's key, it's very important. And so the raised crosswalk was just an option that we're throwing out for this early stage of the design. So we'll kind of look into some of the questions that you've asked, that you've brought up about, what we can do to make it an always stop. And then as far as the handicap space, we can certainly look at the design options for that parking lot, which the diagonal spaces, I think was option B in the parking lot design, does have the handicap spot closer to the tennis courts. And the reason why it's where it is in option A is because the goal was to provide for van accessibility and van passenger loading and unloading it's on the passenger side, and that's where that hashed area next to the handicap spot indicated in option 1 is shown. But in option 2, as you can see, if we kept the diagonal spaces, we can have that handicap spot over by closer to the tennis court.
Oh, and my suggestion, pairing up on Commissioner Revelos, of have we considered switching the traffic flow of the parking lot to enter from the south end, reversing it in the parking to eliminate that awful exit that is now part of the design plan of cars driving across the crosswalk and then looking left, looking right, blocking the crosswalk, not looking at pedestrian, looking at cars. I mean, just a mess there. It'll be a mess. And of course, I would want a stop sign everywhere, absolutely everywhere. This is highest pedestrian zone probably in the entire city, other than perhaps the opposite side of Burlingame Avenue. But it would be this side might be the winner, our #1 spot in the whole city for pedestrians and types of pedestrians, seniors, children, babies, students, everybody goes here.
Commissioner Lee, did you have any further questions? We're going to come around for a second round of comments.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Great. Moving on to Commissioner Israelit.
Hi. I don't really have any additional questions other than the fact that I definitely prefer for the parking area, the first option A, but I can see why there might be concerns about where the handicap spot is currently located. And my only question is, if you could go back to the slide that we were just on prior to this one. Yeah. Is it possible, I really wish you could see my cursor. Is it possible for the first diagonal spot on the far left, which you can see there's a lot of space to the left of it, could that be made into a handicap parking spot with hash striping so that they could exit from either side of the vehicle, as opposed to where it is now, and then where it is shown in this drawing currently would just be converted to regular parking. I think that might solve the problem of getting the handicapped folks right on the sidewalk directly where we want and out of the flow of traffic. But my question is, like, can that be done? Is that feasible? And that's my only question right now.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I can have Mr. Michael Fisher address that. We did actually kind of play with the idea, but he'll be able to better explain as to the concerns that we have with making that corner spot into a handicap.
Sure, it's a good question. As there's only one ADA stall, it needs to be van accessible, which requires, I believe, a 10-foot hatched zone to the right of the car, which is obviously the other side of the car from the driver. So we really need to consider both sides of the car. I'm not 100% sure which of the stalls. I don't know, Stephen, do you want to? Is this the stall you're considering? With the arrow? Or I'm sorry, the red dot, the laser pointer. Is that it?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure
Okay,
if you were asking.
that's
Yes.
the one. Yeah, so the consideration would be the once a vehicle is parked there, the right side of the car. So we need a 10-foot hatching zone, and that would be for a van accessible stall. So we could definitely consider it. That would be our challenge for that specific location. But it's a great comment, and we could absolutely consider it.
Could I ask a follow-up to that question? Same question, Chair?
Mhm.
Yes, please.
What if that particular sidewalk that is right next to that spot is super wide? It's much wider than all the surrounding sidewalks for some reason. I don't know how things work, but could we consider making that more narrow and as wide as a normal sidewalk and stealing some space from that current cement sidewalk to add to the 10-foot necessary buffer that we'd need for the handicap spot as a possible solution?
If I understand your question, can we right where the laser pointer is there? Yes. So kind of borrow from that area and get some more space for the 10-foot ADA van hashed out zone. That's something we can consider. I mean, that kind of expands the scope and cost of the project when we take existing concrete and, essentially increase our improvements. It just increases the cost. But we can actually absolutely look at that area. It's essentially what you're talking about is a hybrid between A and B. So we can absolutely look at combinations of the two. If you look at parking lot design option B, we already have diagonal parking there. Can you show that real quick? So if you look at option B all the way to the left, there is already a hatched out zone. So if you take that hatched out zone in that very first diagonal parking stall and then kind of splice it into option A, and then of course play around with it so that there's at least a 10-foot hatched out zone on the right hand side of the vehicle, I think something like that might work. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, if it's okay, then we can go to Commissioner or Vice Chair Martos.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just had 3 questions. A lot of my questions were already answered by my fellow commissioners asking the questions and getting good answers. The yellow and the white crosswalks, the difference in their locations, why is one yellow, why is one white? The location of the raised crosswalks, and are they like speed cushions? I mean, how raised are they? And then finally, I want to know about the bioretention area. I want to know a little more about the bioretention area. Explain that to me. I don't know what a bioretention area is. So those are my 3 questions.
Sure. So the chair, and I'll let Michael and Andy correct me if I'm wrong. The yellow is because it is within the boundaries of school property, because Burlingame High School is right there, right? Whereas the white, it's not yellow because that's considered a block away from a school zone. So that's why there's the 2 colors. The raised crosswalk is very similar to a speed cushion in height, but unlike a speed cushion where there are openings for fire truck wheel paths to go through, the raised crosswalk is continuous, but the ramp up and ramp down to a raised crosswalk is much wider and therefore more gradual compared to any speed cushions, such as the temporary ones that are installed in the area. So the lack of gaps for the fire trucks to go through is made, we hope that gets made up by a longer transition area, so it's more gradual. And I'm sorry, there was one more question. Oh, the bioretention area. So the bioretention area is very similar to the bulb outs that are installed on Burlingame Avenue as part of the streetscape project, right? And you can even consider something that is between that and maybe that rain garden in front of lot C, which is behind Grapevine. Right, it's an area where there's curb cuts when stormwaters can come in. There's low plantings that are drought resistant, but the idea is the runoff from the roadway has time to kind of fill up that area and have time to percolate down and recharge the underground water, but the sediments that are used will help filter out any contaminants. And so that's what the bioretention area is for.
Okay, so I was wondering on the raised crosswalks, where are they going to be located? Is it just where the white crosswalks are now?
Currently, there's only one proposed, and that's
Okay.
with the flanking blue lines, if you can, right in the middle. Yeah, right there.
And if I may, Michael, I think we have some examples. I
Yeah.
forgot, we do have some examples that we can show of how a raised crosswalk looks like in a bio retention area. There we go.
Right. So typically they're about between 3 and 4 inches in height. So these are some existing cases around the area. This is in San Francisco and South San Francisco. It's kind of a typical bioretention area.
Just one follow-up question on the bioretention area, the location. Is that an area that typically in the wintertime gathers a lot of water?
It would be designed to percolate. Yeah,
so generally speaking, sorry, this is Steven.
Yeah.
Working with Michael. Generally speaking, East Lane does have a slight crown, and oh, you can't see the laser pointer, but
Yeah,
a slight
I got it.
crown down towards the bioretention, and portions of East Lane actually drain towards it as well. So, and then also there are some roof drains that come off of these properties too that drain to it. So this is actually a fairly ideal spot to put the bioretention area. It'll collect stormwater runoff, from the roadway. The oils and the grease won't be able to get into, or not 100%, but the intent is that all the oils, the grease, all that gets separated out in the stormwater bioretention area, so it doesn't end up going into the storm drain system and going out to the bay and pollute the bay basically.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Martos, I have just 2 questions. The first is just to clarify, I've heard mentioned a couple times that we're going to get 80 new spaces in connection with the community center. Do you just mind clarifying how many spaces that is net new? Because obviously I think there's some spaces coming out. So I think it's helpful when I think about how this compares to the status quo ante, what the net new spaces is.
I can take that. So according to the Parks and Recs Department, give me just one moment. There will be 45 new spaces added to the surface lot that's associated with the new community center, and 39 spaces in the garage. And I had specifically asked for public parking spaces. So I assume the 45 and the 39 are for public use. And they are, I wonder if I can.
Because there was a lot there before, so I just want to clarify.
And yes, and I checked with her, and this does not include the existing parking lot that's right next to the tennis court.
Okay.
So there are 45 spaces in the surface lot directly next to the 45 surface lot directly. So the tennis court lot it's also additional spaces. So the 84 is added spaces from the community center. So there's going to be a total of 143 spaces. So approximately 59 in the existing lot next to the tennis courts, and 84 added as part of the community center, netting a total of 143.
Got it. Okay, well, that's very helpful. And then the other question I had is in looking at the comparison between option A and option B, it said, that for option B, there's more skewed driveway alignment. And I was hoping you could just clarify that. How much worse is the driveway alignment for option B? It's a little hard to tell from the picture. It looks like it's still a significant improvement from what it is today, but maybe if you don't mind, I'm sorry if I'm asking you to repeat yourself, but if you don't mind clarifying that point.
Yeah, Michael, if you can take that.
Sure. If you look at option A, the arrow just points kind of straight to the exit driveway. I know it doesn't point straight to the dead center, but it's pretty close. Essentially in option B, you're meandering a greater distance around the longer diagonal parking stall. So you're really kind of, after the final, in this option, the ADA stall is the last stall. After that last stall, you're kind of turning the wheels of the car to the left and zigzagging ever so slightly to the driveway. You're just less aligned directly with the exit driveway.
Okay, but you'll forgive me if I ask the leading question here, which is, this still to me looks like a dramatic improvement from what it is today. Even option B is a dramatic improvement, where, and I think you've made this point well,
Yeah.
It's pretty confusing the way it is now. So it's not like we're basically still getting the improvement substantially, even in option B.
Mhm.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's just the car is doing a zigzag at the exit. So as was discussed heavily today, we really want the potential conflict between vehicle and pedestrian to be the focus there. We want that to be very as safe as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think both option A and option B, in our opinion, is significantly better than it is today. Yes.
Okay.
And just to speak a little to Michael's point, the zigzag is not going to be, you're not going to be slamming left on your steering wheel to get out of this parking lot. It's a couple of foot of offset, so it's not going to feel like someone's going to be totally swinging the wheels to the left and to the right. Zigzag kind of has a
right. I guess that's what I'm getting at, and I'm going to follow my own rule and not get too much into commentary, but I'm trying to understand we're giving up 3 spaces to go with option A, and I'm trying to gauge how much are we losing. If we try and save 3 more spaces under option B, how much are we losing? Is this a dramatic thing or something that most of us would struggle to notice realistically?
You're essentially, I don't know, shifting the car down the page. I don't know, what is it, 5 or 6 feet, Stephen?
Roughly thereabouts. Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more than 6 feet, but
Yeah. I mean, option A is a clear path straight through. So I think, it's the cleanest option. That's why we made it an option, the offset, we lose the parking, but it does, it won't be noticeable at all. It'll be a typical driveway exit. This will also be a typical driveway exit with just a slight, like Michael said, 4 or 5 feet skew.
And the skew happens when you leave the parking lot. In other words, you're going to note there's going to be a little bit of a skew when you leave the parking lot, but once you're in the intersection, you're just in the intersection. Would you notice it at that point?
It's exactly the same as
Yeah.
an A at that point, right?
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to stick to it. So why don't we go to public comments? Are there any, I know we have an email and now I already see a hand up. Oh, that's right. Chair Beatty from the BPAC, I know you had said you wanted to reserve your comments for this, so I'll go to you first, and then if there are no other public comments, we can go to the email that we received from Ms. Pfaff.
Sure. Thank you. So I wanted to say thanks to the city and also to the consultants. We really support the overall objectives of this project. And want to just note that this is a really, really heavy pedestrian area, and we want to support safe crossings between Burlingame Caltrain and the park. We like the design that we see, particularly the north end of the design, and we saw a lot of opportunity to reduce asphalt, as you might say, on the southern end by building out that area south of Burlingame Avenue. We do feel strongly that there needs to be a third crossing across East Lane at the southern end of that intersection for a number of reasons. But basically, we know people are going to jaywalk if we don't put a crossing in there. And we also know that people are going to be at times in a hurry. So they're going to catch a train. What we don't want to do is create a situation where they have to go out of their way or dash across some place where cars don't think that they're meant to be. So we would support the addition of a third crosswalk, and we would support building out more greenery, widening that little green strip that looks like a baguette. We think there's a real opportunity to widen that and make it a pedestrian landing zone there and make it a safer crossing. So I think, net message here is good direction, and let's do more of taking out the sort of amorphous asphalt intersection. And then the second thing is we felt really concerned about the no stop sign for that white crosswalk across East Lane. The cars that will be going down, that will not have a stop sign there, will also not have had to have stopped at the previous intersection. And it's concerning to think that, that they may have built up actually some considerable speed or be maintaining a higher speed. We want to make sure that they have some sort of way of being forced to slow down, particularly if pedestrians are expecting a safer environment. We had a bunch of other sort of smaller comments that I think have already been relayed by some of the commissioners who were at the BPAC meeting, so I will pause there. Thank you.
If there's no response to that, we could go to the email, but I'm just pausing to see if anybody wanted to respond to that.
To the chair, I think with the third crosswalk, again, we would have to do something about that thin strip of landscaped area. And so that would be a discussion that we would have to work with Caltrain on, because they'll have to give up parking in order to widen that area. And if that discussion stalls in any way, we can continue to keep pushing forward and potentially have this as future improvements.
May I ask, just picking up on that, have you considered doing that third crosswalk? And it's basically, I don't even know if the picture entirely captures it, but doing the third crosswalk at where it would be the very right side of this picture. So if someone didn't feel like they wanted to move to the white crosswalk in the middle of this picture to get across the tracks, for some reason they wanted to be further south, they could go to the other end. Is there because it looks like there might be a landing zone there. Was that something that anybody considered? Do you see what I'm talking about? Like if you were to put a crosswalk basically at the far right side of this picture?
Right, like almost past the tip of the right tip of that thin
Entirely on the other side there. So if you yes, the red dot is capturing what I'm saying there. Yeah.
That essentially will be not necessarily mid-block, but that is away from an intersection, right? And we typically want to put crosswalks together at an intersection as much as possible. And also keep in mind, there is a bit of a curve in the road right around that area. And so we would have to look into that, but we did not look at that as part of this design process. But if we were to consider putting a crosswalk there are concerns that we would have to vet out.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm just throwing it out there as another option, but I think the thing with well, I'll come back to the third crosswalk when we're done with public comments.
Through the chair, one last thing on the third crosswalk. If you do have that third crossing that puts you, even if we could do something to that island, this is not, if it was a T intersection, it'd be fine, but you have to recall this, we'd have another crossing here. So you're not really saving any crossing distance because, I mean, maybe a couple feet because this is shorter. I'm sorry, the entrance to the Caltrain parking lot is a shorter distance than Burlingame Ave, but you're introducing that fourth leg. So we're trying to focus folks to continue this pattern. Obviously you have more pedestrians there. It's going to be more aware. People are going to be more aware that there are folks crossing at these locations. And it's just something to add about if there's more to just adding a third one in this particular case.
I guess I'll ask, if you'll indulge me, I'll just ask one other follow-up question and then we can get back to the public comment. I mean, the other thing is, we don't entirely have to speculate here, right? We could, has anyone studied the pedestrian movement in this intersection and figured out if, Chair Beatty said people are likely to just jaywalk across that path where the third crosswalk's being proposed. Has anyone looked to see if that's true or not true?
I understand what you're saying. In fairness, the way it's set up right now is kind of jaywalking. I mean, cutting across the intersection, a pedestrian scramble, if you will. We're having you go through the middle rather than perpendicular to the road. So yeah. If you look at that, right now it's the easiest, but it's also the one with the most conflict points because you put everyone in the middle of the intersection.
Okay. Why don't we, I'm gonna have to go back and study the before pictures, but I don't want to slow us down. So why don't we go to to Ms. Pfaff's email and then we can sort of return to the commissioners.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
So
we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Dear Chair Wetton and fellow commissioners, I will be out of town on Thursday without computer access, but wanted to comment briefly on the evolution of this project and the various options. All of these concepts have merit and will improve the current safety situation significantly. I think the proposed design makes safety sense for pedestrians while also keeping traffic patterns simple. My comment is related to the 4 parallel parking spots that hug the east side of the island where the large oak tree is located. I'm curious if it would be feasible to consider eliminating those few spots, thereby creating several more feet to landscape, while also serving to further shorten up that crosswalk at Burlingame Avenue near the tennis courts. I hope some of you have had a chance to see the lovely park that the Parks Department has recently completed adjacent to this area. They have reconfigured and re-landscaped along Burlingame Avenue adjacent to the tennis courts and have created a very inviting park and seating area. I have attached a few photos taken recently. It seems to me that this project is actually a natural extension of their project, creating a nice safe path adjacent to the island as well as a more generous landscaped setting for the oak tree on Burlingame Square. Please find photos of the newly designed park as well as Burlingame Square oak. I do know we never like to eliminate parking spaces. However, thinking ahead just a few months, we will have lots and lots of available parking just down the street at the new community center, not to mention at the new parking lot not too far away on Lorden Avenue and Lot O by the donut shop. From what I typically have noticed, those parallel spots are rarely at capacity, and what we win back in return seems aesthetically quite substantial while further enhancing pedestrian safety. Thank you for your consideration, and many thanks to TSPC, BPAC, and staff who have been actively focused on this area for quite some time. Sincerely yours, Jennifer Bath.
Okay, just do the consultants, I don't, in fairness, I don't know how much of advanced opportunity the consultants had to review that email. But do the consultants or Ms. Mai, do you have any thoughts you'd like to weigh in on with respect to that email? I mean, the idea is to expand the park space.
Well, I can take that. Again, when we look at when we start with any design, we want to make sure that we keep as much as possible existing parking, especially being so close to the downtown area. We have not, I'm not aware, maybe we have, but to really observe how much that parking lot is used. The times that I've been there, I have been able to find parking at that lot. And so with both option A and option B with the parking lot, we try our best not to cut into that island where the oak tree is. We met with the city arborist to make sure that anything that we do, we will keep him in the loop and also get his guidance. And so if we were to expand that area into more landscape, I'm not sure how, and I would have to ask the city arborist. I'm not sure how much we can plant there, given just how extensive the root system is in that area. So even if we expand it, it might be still just tan bark as it currently is. But to Ms. Pfaff's comment, again, we kind of noted in the presentation that there is significant increase in parking availability in the future. But any start of a design, we really try to maintain as much existing parking as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mai. So with that, I think we can go back around to the commissioners one more time to get any final comments and views that they might have here. We'll start again, Commissioner Revelos.
Hey, sorry, I just had a battery go dead. I'm just switching over. So, I mean, my comments are pretty limited. I covered most everything in my questions. I mean, the only comment that I really have, it's kind of general. I see this as an opportunity to really extend the greenery out all the way to the road and to make that park just that much more attractive from the, the sight lines from East Lane. And then also, in a perfect world where we didn't have the jurisdictional issues with Caltrain there, I mean, you have the beautiful building there, the old, I believe that was a car dealership. I can't remember the name of the brand. They're out of business, and classic luxury brand called the Candy Store now. But that beautiful building, you have this beautiful plaza, and there's an opportunity to really extend this plaza into the park. I just want to get the most out of it as quickly as we can. And that developed area on the side of the park, on the side of the tennis courts by Burlingame Avenue, actually, I just walked by that park the other day and I discovered that new landscaping and seating area, and I was really pleased by that. And then of course I went down there today to look at all of this. And I don't know, I'm not concerned about the parking spaces. As far as the parking, I prefer option A. One of my concerns with option B is that last stall right by the driveway that's going to be designated an accessible space. You know, there's going to potentially be some really large accessible vehicles in that space. And I don't know, you know, I don't know if the consultants are considering the idea that there could be a large cutaway bus in that space, loading and unloading, and how that would affect people exiting that driveway. So that's a huge concern of mine. So if we're going to go with that lane, which it seems very likely we will, I definitely prefer option A for the parking. I'm greatly concerned about that exit. I just know how people are, how they behave, and you know, you can have that riser there. People are they have their kids, they're in a hurry, they've got to get to the next place, and they're just looking around and coming out of that driveway. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I had a very good friend of mine nearly run me over at the intersection of Burlingame and Lorton. And I mean, she started to go, you know, proceed through the stop sign and nearly hit me. And I waved at her, not knowing it's her. And then she honked at me because she recognized me and was trying to say hello. And I thought she was honking at me because she was mad at me for standing in front of her SUV. So I know how people get. And I just am very, very nervous about that exit. And I just want to make sure that we capture every opportunity we can to bring that greenery out and to bring that plaza closer to the park. I'm confident that everybody here has the same sort of objective. So those are my comments at this moment.
Okay, Commissioner Lee.
Yes, thank you. I do agree with Jennifer, the public comment, and Commissioner Rebelos that we do want to extend the greenery of the park forward. And by losing those 4 parking places, which are relatively insignificant in the scheme of life, and since we are gaining stalls, to expand the island and increase the greenery, it's a 10 to me. Then continuing to the exit there, I agree with Commissioner Rebelos. It's very, very difficult, that exit. If there was a stop sign, if there was a raised crosswalk, high visibility crosswalk across that, and only a 12 feet wide opening for the cars to be led out to Burlingame Avenue, that might help it. It cannot be a wide driveway exit. It has to be narrow, stop sign, raised crosswalk, visibility crosswalk. I'd also absolutely want a third way of crossing across East Lane at the south end of the intersection of Burlingame Avenue. People will jaywalk there all the time, and they go in absolutely every direction right now at that crosswalk. And I do too. So people go every which way, and you need to facilitate them safely to give them crosswalks. You know, we're not improving the situation that much if we don't give crosswalks in all directions. And this is a pedestrian grant. And I would very much like the city staff and our consultants to look at reversing that left turn lane so that it becomes a southbound left turn lane. Let the cars queue up as they may heading northbound. But southbound, eliminate the queuing by making that a left turn lane southbound. That way we could put in a stop sign because we would be reducing greatly the number of queuing vehicles. And we really need a stop sign at that intersection. This is pedestrian safety and they need a stop sign. They need to rely on people stopping. I did look up school crosswalks, and because this is all of these intersections are contiguous to the school grounds. They're within 600 feet of the school grounds and they are within 2,800 feet of the school building. All these intersections are considered school crossings, and it would help to have them painted as such. And then I did want to just reiterate that I'd like the bulb out at the BHS intersection so that little black car in the corner can't back up over the crosswalk, and have a bulb out where the crosswalk lands at Burlingame Avenue at Caltrain so that the pedestrians are far more visible to the motor vehicles and they have a shorter distance to cross. And those are my notes. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Israelit.
Hi. I have to start off by just saying that I drive through that intersection almost every day for many years. That's where I used to drop my BHS student off. So some of the things that I'll say sort of are referencing to that. I disagree with Commissioner Lee about changing the lanes north and southbound on East or Caroline, whatever it is in that one little stretch, because what this photo aerial view is not showing is right where that yellow crosswalk is in the far left that crosses Caroline. That is right where the cars that cross over the train tracks land. And so you can extend where you can see the train tracks in the bottom right corner. So we really don't. I don't think we can put a stop sign at the end of that block because we will have cars backing up onto the train tracks, which we just can't do. And as far as having the two lanes that northbound, the left-hand turn and the straight, I think if we don't have those, when the train is in the station, cars do queue up at that left-hand turn lane, waiting, until the train has passed, and it does actually get completely full. The straight lane lets cars continue to travel through the intersection, but if we only had one lane there, it will back up beyond into the new intersection that we're trying to improve right now, and I think will cause problems with pedestrians. So I just wanted to say that, I kind of disagree with that change for those reasons. And moving to the two options, A and B, I definitely prefer option A. I think aesthetically, it's going to be a nicer looking with slightly more green space. But the main reason is that I really prefer the exit. I feel like it is by far safer to have those two green landing areas on either side of the driveway where pedestrians can stand and wait and be seen. I also really like the idea of it just being a straight shot exit where cars are not going to be at any kind of funny angle. So for pedestrian visibility, I think it's best. And in addition, when a car exits, if they do have that little zigzag, what I agree with Commissioner Revelis that, I think it'd be great to have possibly have right turn only at that exit of the driveway. And if they're sort of canted that other way after having zigged and zagged and their tires are sort of turned another way, I just think that that's an unnecessary conflict. So I like the straight shot. clear line of sight for pedestrians, wheels aren't canted. And then it also, is best for cars that are turning right. So I think that's it. I don't want to go back to the very beginning, but the original community proposed reverse flow design. I actually just want to briefly mention that I didn't think that that would be good, because when you exit, for two reasons. One is almost all the traffic that enters that parking lot comes not from Lion Hogue, but the great mass of Burlingame in the other direction. So that would force them to cross the train tracks, turn right, then turn left, and then turn left into that parking area. And furthermore, if it did flow in reverse, when you exit that parking area, again, you're not really seeing it in this particular aerial view, but the train crossing is right there, and that would be extremely confusing place for people to exit, especially because cars coming across the train tracks do not have a stop. So I think that would be really dangerous. But I think we've passed that point. I just wanted to make sure that I did mention my concerns. So I like parking lot A, and I like overall, I think this is going to be so much more safe and better looking. I'm very excited that we're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Israelit. Vice Chair Martos, your comments.
Yeah, if we could go back to my comments are mainly on the parking lot area. If we can go to that A and B diagram. Great, thank you. Yeah, so, initially I thought that I was going to go with option B there for a couple reasons. You get a few more parking spaces out of it. The zigzag at the exit, as people come off the train tracks, or even going through that parking lot, I could see them speeding through straight shot to the exit, where a zigzag might add a little traffic calming there. They'd have to slow down a little bit, but I see what my fellow commissioners are talking about, the safety areas for the pedestrians, and that's very important. I was also looking at that. I heard the consultants, Mr. Fisher, say something about 5 feet. There's a 5-foot setback or something like that from the exit. Can you explain that a little bit before I comment any further?
Yeah, it would basically be the distance between the driveway and the curb return. Right, so that we're trying to increase that distance.
Okay.
As much as possible.
Okay, and the purpose of that is why?
Just to separate driveways from intersections.
Okay. So where the cars exit the parking lot to the curb should be more than 5 feet, is that the point?
The driveway should be separated from the curb return, yeah, as much as possible. But there is I think there's a city guideline as of 5 feet.
Can you do you have your pointer? Can you point to what you're talking about, where the 5 feet is?
Sure.
Or minimum 5 feet?
Yeah, this distance right there between the end of the arc and the beginning of the driveway.
I see. So that should be more than 5 feet. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to maximize that as best we can. I don't know the number. I think we're just shy of 5 feet. Stephen, do you know the exact number? I think
it's like 3.5 feet. So we're about 18 inches off.
Okay. So go back to the AB, please. Diagram. Thanks. So the B doesn't help with that at all. Is it possible to move. So the other thought I had is as cars are exiting, there's quite a big stretch of pavement there that is sidewalk area that they're going to be driving across. And I'm not sure what the foliage is going to be like there, but I'm sure they'll have plenty of visibility on the street. But is it possible to move the exit a little closer to the street? Maybe make room for one more parking spot in that lot, and shorten that space between the exit of the lot and the entrance to the street? Is that a possibility at all, or is there some guidelines that you can't do that?
We can definitely look at maximizing, safety and minimizing conflicts between cars and pedestrians. Whether we can specifically get one more parking stall, that would need to be, I guess, 22 more feet. I'm not sure. An end stall should be about 20 feet. So I'm not sure what our current end stall, whether we have to widen that 2 feet or not, but somewhere thereabouts. So you could see 20 feet would be quite a distance there. We could look at it. I think it would be difficult to fit one more car. I don't think it would be a good pedestrian path to travel. They would kind of meander specifically around that final car.
Okay. Yeah, just,
I think my final, just one more point.
sure thing, go ahead.
A car could inhibit sight distance. I don't think I'd recommend it just for that, because
Okay.
pedestrian, could essentially be standing innocently behind the car, but not well seen by the drive aisle vehicle.
Okay. Yeah, I struggle with that exit point and what's the best, safest exit strategy there for the pedestrians as well as the vehicle exiting and cars coming down Burlingame Avenue, that stop sign. Okay. Well, I think from pedestrian safety that I'd probably lean towards option A then. If we had to choose one, and maybe to avoid driver conflicts, as some of my fellow commissioners mentioned, possibly a right turn only exiting that parking lot. Yeah, those are the only comments I had. All the rest of the questions were brought up and answered. So that's all I have, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marcos. I think just first, I do want to address this third crosswalk issue, because I think if I understand it as proposed, and this, we may not be looking at the best picture to, the odd thing about a third crosswalk as proposed is it seems like it would take the pedestrian right into the Caltrain parking lot there, which is not how it is today, and it's not as it's proposed here. And I think that's why I was suggesting maybe if you really felt like there needed to be a third crossing, you'd put it at the other end. Because I think it's a little, I almost, if you had to have a third crossing, I would rather do it mid-block than do it right in the intersection where you're taking people into the parking lot there. It's just, I know that the idea is you'd expand the median, but people still need to get from the median to the curb. And I heard it said earlier, there's the distance from the distance from the corner to the landing point from the old crosswalk as compared to the new set of crosswalks really isn't different. And you have a landing. So I think I don't feel as strongly about the third crosswalk at the end of the day as I've heard from others. But more importantly, I'm not sure how it would work in a way that is really safe and not landing people in the middle of a parking lot. I have to say I'm probably in the minority here, in that I think I'd be willing to try and make option B work and try and save a few parking stalls. I say that, and this is sort of a theme with every proposal we see, which is, we give up a few spots here and a few spots there. In the meantime, we're doing it one at a time and not looking at the downtown collectively. And I know that we are getting closer and closer to taking out a lot in the middle of town for town square. And we're going to go down a significant number of parking spaces. And we don't know how crowded the downtown will be post-COVID. And I suspect it will be, if anything, more crowded because I think people will be home more. But I'm speculating. So I wouldn't mind trying to make that option B work if it isn't a big sacrifice of safety. Of course, if it is a big sacrifice of safety, then we shouldn't do it. But if it's really just a skew of a couple feet, I wonder if we couldn't find a way to design other safety features in. I've heard a lot of good suggestions tonight along those lines that could compensate for the fact that there's a little bit of a skew. But you'd have to get down to the detailed engineering on that. And I think that's my only comments here. Mr. Wong, are you looking for a vote on this?
Through chair, no, this is primarily an update, and I guess for the parking, we'll take a look at some of the things we had that talked about tonight, whether pushing it out, trying to see if we can put the ADA space in a different location and see how that pans out. Because, again, I think we're down to maybe a hybrid of that, but the basic, what we're doing to the intersection basically doesn't change. It's tweaking the parking lot, and we can I'll check with Michael and Stephen, but I think that's something we can kind of work through. But I think what we want to do is definitely show you what's going on here and our direction,
Yeah.
how we got to where we got to.
I'm sorry, my brain works slowly, but I'd like to make one other point about the ADA space. Because I'm not disabled, but I have been on crutches now for several months in the past couple of years, so I do know a little bit what it's like when you're not walking at full capacity. And I have to say, although I've never had the benefit of being able to park in an ADA space, but if I were, say, on crutches again, I would far rather be in the space that is next to this sidewalk and the tennis courts than be off in this space, wherever it is, the one end or the other, either way, and be in this space back here, which is by East Lane. When you are kind of at a disability, like when I was on crutches, 50 feet
Makes a difference.
and if I'm like trying to get my kids to the tennis courts, being forced to having to park back there, which is not really near anything, unless I suppose if the person's going the train, then I guess it's an advantage. So it depends on where the person using the ADA space is going. But if the person using the ADA space is actually trying to use the park as opposed to park for the train, I don't think it's a great placement of the ADA space. Maybe at the end of the day, there's a way to shift that parking and modulate what you're doing in option A and option B and save a couple spaces, but it's just something to consider. So sorry for that last comment before the close of the bell.
No, that's good. I mean, again, I think we understand what the commission's looking for as far as parking, and especially that ADA space, and we'll try to tweak it to see where we can, yeah, position it a little better.
Yeah. Okay. So with
No
that, if there's not seeing any other comments, I think we could move on to item 6C, sorry. So I'll close this item for now, if there's no objection. Okay,
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Stephen.
thank you. Thank you for staying with us late into the evening and your hard work on this. I know it took a lot of thought.
I'll see if I can get a slide up, share screen. All right. All right, thank you, Chair Wetton. This is a discussion item that the commission wanted to bring up, given that things are changing. We had initially a year ago started with what are we going to do about the downtown and how to accommodate it, and we got through that. Now we're putting things back to the way they were in a way. So tonight's discussion is a teaspoon-led discussion, I guess, regarding the Broadway and Burlingame Avenue closure parklet program that we've had going on. Let me go ahead and go to the next slide. What I wanted to give you on this slide is what's currently happening out there, just so you have the numbers in front of you. The parklets, again, as you can see for the businesses, we've got 43 businesses that have parklets, 7 in the Broadway district and 36 downtown. We've lost, we're using a total of 88 spaces, 17 on Broadway, 71 in the downtown. We also have 8 curbside. I think that's actually up to 9 curbside spaces. We added 1 on Burlingame Avenue. And again, these parklets are in place, have been promised to be in place until Labor Day by the commission. I'm sorry, by council. And then I want to point out, we also have our economic development specialist, Joseph Sanfilippo. The council's economic development subcommittee will be discussing the closures next week at their July 14th meeting. A couple other tid points that because I know you'll ask, the Highland Garage, we're anticipating an opening in September. And again, there's a number of spaces we hope to gain, and those are long-term spaces. Lot E closure, if you don't know already, I think some notices have been out. We're expecting mid-August, early September, and this will be a phased closure. In that lot, there are 70 spaces. We won't lose them all together, but we will lose them all together by the end of this. And then during construction, there's some on-street spaces they're going to need because of some of the work they have to do close to the back of Walk on Lorton as well as Park. Again, I'll just add this: upon completion, the parking garage for that project, the post office garage, will be open to the public only in the evenings. And that's as far as the time. I don't have that, and I'm sure that's something that'll be worked out. And let you know, we tried to notice everyone we could in the business district. I see Mr. Kavarian is on this as well, and I did see Ms. Keller earlier. They were all noticed for tonight's meeting. So kind of give you that. I'll leave this slide up. But oops. Sorry about that. I'll leave the slide up just so you have those numbers in front of you.
Okay. Well, on this one, why don't we, because especially since what's left of the members of the public have been waiting so patiently, why don't we go straight to public comment, and then I'll start running through the commissioners again. So I see Mr. Kavarian, you got your hand up. I probably didn't need to. I figured you'd want to comment. So why don't you go ahead if if it looks like you're able to talk now. So please feel free to comment.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. The parklets and road closures are a dilemma for any business district. The last 15 months, our downtown has accommodated, I believe, 7 or 8 restaurants with parklets. I'm speaking tonight as a business owner, not as the president of the Broadway bid. And as a business owner, a retail business owner, I should say, you know, things are going back to normal. Restaurants, in my opinion, are back full force, and they're hiring people, and they've been busy the last several weeks. And many merchants have concerns with parklets. And the concern is everything is 100% open. Why do we still have parklets? Hair salons, nail salons, retailers, and other non-food businesses have concerns keeping the parklets. And I understand that some of the parklet owners have spent $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and I feel for them. And I think they should have the right to extend the parklets. But businesses who have the orange barricades and have not made an investment in having a nice built out parklets, I think it's time to decide if they should keep it or they should have other options, as maybe give them free encroachment permits to have tables and chairs on sidewalks and remove the parklets that are just the orange barricades. I believe we have 8 businesses, not 7, on Broadway, and 1 on the side street, which is Cappuccino for Broadway Grill. And also we have, I believe, 18 parking spots instead of 17. I did a count today, and those are the numbers I came up with. Things are going back to normal. Road closures, like we did last year, I spoke to a restaurant owner. He said, I don't think we need road closures since we have parklets. Road closures do not help retailers. They don't help hair and nail salons. And we have to understand also that restaurants the last 15 months have been open for food to go on limited basis, indoor dining, where hair and nail salons, the majority of last year, they were closed. Retailers were also closed. I was forced to close half of March, all of April and May. So we as retailers and other non-food services have struggled. And I think we need to go back to normal, what we had. And so everybody succeeds, not only one industry. We have to be fair. Restaurants have a great overhead, but retailers and other services, many of them didn't get any rent reduction or grants. They didn't get the subsidies like restaurants got with PPP funding or the RFF funding, EIDL funding. So it's a dilemma. It's a tough thing to decide what to do. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karanian. Your input, as always, is I find very helpful. I hope at some point, I regret we'll be speaking tonight without the benefit of the DBID input. My apologies to Ms. Kelleher that the other item went so long and she wasn't able to hang in, because I'm interested to hear as much input on this as possible. So with that, if there's no other public comments, and hang in, Mr. Karanian, we're going to go through some commissioner comments, but if you I usually don't want speakers to have two bites at the apple, but since you're the only public commenter tonight, I will give you a second bite of the apple after the commissioner's comment, if you so choose. With that,
So I have an email from somebody
oh,
here for public
okay,
comment.
yeah, Ms. Brewer, go ahead and read it then.
All right, thank you. So this is from Christopher Diaz. He's the owner of Potpourri on Broadway. And so he says, regarding the parklets on Broadway, as a retail store owner on Broadway, I have been supportive of the restaurants since the pandemic began. Not only do I believe in helping other struggling businesses, but I recognize their importance in driving traffic to Broadway. So at first, when it came time to consider closing the street for them, I was in favor of the closure. Then when parklets were discussed, I again supported the restaurants. For the past 15 months, Broadway has helped the restaurants, but I think it's now time to turn some of that energy and those resources to other businesses. Restaurants have had time to make adjustments, gather financial support, and build new revenue streams. They are now able to operate more or less as they did before. There is, there is less need for the parklets now. Understanding that some people still do not want to eat inside, if parklets will remain an option, I believe a restaurant should now pay a fee for the parklet. This will ensure that the parklet is being utilized. Right now on Broadway, there are some parklets where this is not the case. People are frustrated when they come to Broadway and can't find parking, but the parklets are completely unoccupied because the restaurant is either not open or they are underutilizing the space. Retail on Broadway needs help. Parking is a vital part of the equation. I'm willing to give some of that parking for the restaurants, but I want to feel like it's being used enough to justify the sacrifice. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay. If there are no other public comments, I'm going to go to the commissioners just to switch up the order a little bit. I'll give Commissioner Lee the opportunity to lead off and then go to Commissioner Israelit and then Commissioner Reveles.
Thank you, Chair. I did some homework on this and drove around and looked at the different parklets on both Broadway and Burlingame Avenue. And there are vast differences between one parklet and another. The other thing I noticed, I was up in Healdsburg for the weekend and they have approved all of their parklets through the year 2023. So they can guarantee their people, their restaurant through 2023. I'm not proposing that, but I do agree with Mr. Kavranian that not all parklets are created equal. Some of them are just the orange barriers with maybe a few tables and chairs with like a Costco awning over them. But some of them, for example, over at Stack's, where I interviewed the owner, he spent a fortune putting it in. It's really beautiful. It enhances that intersection in the corner. He said the parklet is what saved him during the during COVID when they were so heavily impacted. And as you walk by the parklet, or even drive by, as you go by the parklet, for example, Stack's, it is so charming and it's so European that it adds a lot to the community. And that's one of the expensive, really good ones. Some of them are just awful and ugly and very little money was put in. So I just don't think we have a blanket policy that covers all of them. I think there are only 75 or something. Maybe the orange ones, with the orange, we work on eliminating, but the ones where the owners put in a lot of money, have them fill out a form. How much did it cost them? How much have they recouped? Do they attribute to those? Perhaps give the ones that spent a lot of money, and I mean, it's a lot of money to put those in. The loss of those parklets can't be that great. It's at least 50-50 of the ugly ones versus the ones that are really special and add a lot of character to the community. I do think we have to be more fair about it. I don't think a blanket policy is fair to either the retailers or to the restaurants that put in a ton of money. Adds a lot of ambiance, and it actually draws people to the city because it makes it special and it makes the feeling special, the good ones. But the ones that are the orange ones, I kind of agree with. So I just don't think a blanket policy. And we could discuss having a fee for the ones that we retain, or what the standards are, or the balance of cash produced versus cash that they invested in it. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. I think I said I was going to go to Commissioner Israel next on this one.
Thank you. Well, I completely agree with you, Commissioner Lee, as far as, some of the businesses, restaurants in specific, I guess we're speaking about now, really put an investment in and in their parklets, and they are charming, and they definitely are drawing more people to those areas than if we didn't have parklets at all. Most people, shoppers, neighbors really are enjoying living outside like that, even, in the cooler months. I hear what you're saying. Some of the parklets have not been enhanced at all. And I do notice that, especially on Broadway, that some of them seem to never really be fully utilized. It's kind of dramatic. I feel uncomfortable charging businesses a fee to continue the use of their parklet when they have already invested a lot of money in building said parklets. What might make it more fair and is perhaps we could somehow measure how they're being utilized, and the ones that are unattractive maybe receive, if you're not enhanced, you receive X number of demerits or whatever. And if your space is not, being fully utilized or is empty quite a bit of the time, that also should count toward whether we continue allowing you to have a parklet or not. I don't think we should eliminate the parklets, but especially the ones that are a draw to both Burlingamers and people who are coming to Burlingame specifically because of what we have now. But I do think I agree with you. We should consider eliminating the ones that are not being fully used and that are not necessarily attractive or enhanced.
Okay. Commissioner Rebelos, you're up next.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, right? Because it sort of straddles maybe a couple of different commissions. And, our interest is parking, pedestrian safety. But there's a planning commission element to this, I think. But what's interesting to me is I agree with my fellow commissioners to this point that Broadway, I would say that most of the parklets are underutilized, except for maybe a couple of different spaces on weekends. And then there's definitely a handful downtown that have just completely enhanced the experience of walking along Burlingame Avenue. Some of them at lunchtime and some of them at dinner time, and some of them a little bit later in the day. And I think that we need to have a way to, I think there's a difference between a coffee shop providing a few spaces in the street for their customers to have a cup of coffee, and a more formal restaurant that has really brought their, where the restaurant is an experience as well as a foodie kind of thing. They've brought that experience out into the street and made that part of the atmosphere of Burlingame. And so I think we need a way to sort of separate out the fast food, the fast casual, the brunch, dinner, and then we also need to maybe make some accommodations for late night going forward. I think that will be a thing. I think that could be very interesting, especially on the weekends. And I think that we have to maybe consider a way to monetize it, because it does, to me, that does make sense. Look, if you're going to take parking spaces, you should have to pay for them. And if you're generating revenue, there is a potential for some restaurants to as much as double their seating capacity with these parklets. And when we're in a complete post-pandemic world. So it's not unreasonable to require that they pay for the space that they're using. I also think that, as someone mentioned, the street closures, I found the Broadway street closure to be very disappointing. It just didn't seem to catch at all. It seemed to be completely ineffective at mid-pandemic or at the height of the pandemic. But I think that maybe we should think about something, and I really not sure that it falls entirely into our purview as a commission to really chime in on, but for what level we can, I would say that we should definitely look at maybe some kind of midsummer weekend and holiday promenade when the weather's at its best, because there were some fantastic days out there on Burlingame Avenue, and people were coming from around the Bay Area. And it wasn't a festival. We weren't having an art and wine festival. We weren't doing anything different other than just closing the street, and people did show up. It became so popular that we had to close it down. So I think we need to talk about that at some point. But yeah, I think that there's definitely some parklets that need to be, I think it's essential that they remain. I'm not comfortable naming restaurants at this point, but I think that I walked around downtown. I walked around Burlingame Avenue this afternoon at about 4:30, and there were a couple of them that were just packed. There were others that were completely empty. Those are my comments.
Okay, Commissioner Martos, Vice Chair Martos.
Thank you, Chair. I have mixed feelings about this. Kind of.
Chair Martos, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your connection is very bad. So we're not really getting what you're saying. Sure.
How's that?
You sound good.
Any
now.
better?
Yeah, go ahead. Try again.
Apologize for that. I had to switch my router around. So I have mixed feelings about this. I walked Burlingame Avenue last Friday at around 6:30, between 6 and 6:30, and I heard the restaurants' concerns about the excess capacity and trying to catch up on their sales by having more seating in the parklet. So I wanted to see for myself, are the restaurants full at that time? So I walked the Ave and I took some notes, and I found that 8 restaurants at that time on a Friday night had full capacity both inside and in the parklets, and the rest, which would be about 24 of the 36 in that area, were utilizing some part of the parklets, but their indoor seating still had plenty of availability. So it looked like their capacity was underutilized, and the parklets really didn't add any more business to their space. So that was one thing that I noticed. And then I talked with a couple of the restaurant people, the hosts at the restaurants, and I asked them, do your parklets stay filled up? And they said, well, when it's sunny and warm out, yeah, but as the sun goes down, people want to get out of the cold and they come inside. Okay. I don't know how widespread that is, because there's a couple right on the corner of Burlingame Avenue in California that are busy all the time, no matter what the weather's like outside. But it seems like the parklets aren't going to be heavily used all the time or not heavily used all the time. So I think with the cooler weather coming up in the winter time, November, once we get past October, that there'll be less utilization of the parklets. And so maybe we start phasing them out, or the restaurants that have invested heavily in the parklets start paying if they want to keep those pay the city if they want to keep those parklets to ensure that they're actually making use of that space. What I observed, there wasn't that many that really needed a parklet to seat all their customers. There was plenty of space inside the restaurants to do that. So, I agree with my fellow commissioners that maybe the orange barrier parklets could start going away. The people that have invested in parklets, maybe they last a couple more months, but they should probably pay a little bit to have that space, or get rid of the parklet if it's not to their benefit, and give the parking spots back to the city. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair Martos. I think my views are probably closer in line with yours. I think I would just preface by saying we have to be a little bit forward-looking here. We heard at the beginning of the presentation that we're going to be losing a core lot in the downtown. We're going to lose 70 spaces in the fall permanently. And I think that we're going to be in post-COVID conditions where people are going to be coming downtown again. And as I said earlier, I think particularly in the lunch hour, we're going to have more people downtown than we may have had pre-COVID, because we're going to have a lot of Burlingame residents who are home during the week when they might not have been home otherwise. And I'm pretty concerned that we might have capacity constraints again that are pretty tight. If we keep any of these parklets, I think we absolutely should be charging. This is public space. So to have a private business take public space for free outside of an emergency doesn't make any sense to me. My observations, which are just one person's observations, may not be as recent as a couple of the other commissioners, was when I had lunch downtown with my daughter, is a lot of the parklets are not fully utilized. There are, what I saw is sidewalk tables and parklet tables, and it would be sort of half and half. I think to the extent that restaurants want to expand out on onto the sidewalks, I totally welcome that. I think it's great. I think, in a couple instances, it's probably necessary for the restaurants, and there's no reason to inhibit that. But in addition to the sort of the orange ones that are more unsightly, the reality is that these were measures that were taken for emergency purposes during COVID. They weren't, any restaurateur who made these investments did not have a reasonable expectation that the investments would be permanent. I would further add, some of these restaurants have backspace. They have space behind the restaurant that are either already set up for outdoor tables, or they're parking their own cars behind the restaurant while they're taking public parking in front. So I kind of feel strongly that it is time to phase out the parklets. I think maybe if the city were to set an appropriately high fee, the ones that get the most value might say, okay, well, this is high value, it's worth more than a parking space, and we'll pay. But I think there's going to be much higher demand within a few months. Let's zoom past the summer, looking towards October and the Christmas season. there's going to be much higher demand for those spaces and maybe lower usage of the parklets. And I think we have to be prepared for that and plan accordingly. I think that's all the comments I had. So in terms of, oh yeah, I'm happy to circle back around. So Commissioner Israel, you had your hand up, so go ahead. You're on mute though.
Sorry. This has sort of been percolating through my mind for the past few meetings, but like I feel like this is a question for the city and for Chair Watton, if he knows. You know, the city council has moved forward with the planning of this central square and taking away the parking spots that were in that lot. And we are making decisions, you know, on pedestrian safety and, you know, financial feasibility of parklets for small businesses based on the fact that parking is going to get, you know, really tight. I hear that over and over again. And it kind of bothers me, you know. Did the city council, do they have some forethought or some plan that I'm not aware of that to supplement the loss of the parking that we're going to be experiencing for this new development? Like, because we're using it to weigh on our decisions about just about everything. Chapin, you know, the new intersection we discussed this evening, parklets. I just want to make sure that, is there something coming down the pike that maybe we should consider when we are weighing in on these things?
Through the chair, I wish I had an answer for that. I do not know. And I'm sure some of it in, like I mentioned earlier, the post office site, having to be able to have public access after hours when the businesses are not using it, it goes into some of that, but I do not know that. And I will see if I can find out if there's something in the development agreement or how. I'll go back and I'll check with the director to see if that was discussed at the council meeting when they discussed the development of that.
So since Commissioner Israel, you directed the question to me too. I mean, I've heard, the only thing I've heard is what Mr. Wong said, which is we will have evening access to the post office lot. But the thing to keep in mind, and I know Vice Chair Martos knows this, we don't really have an evening capacity problem. In the evenings, the lots south of Howard tend to be pretty open, and anyone who's willing to walk a block can park at night. We do have really serious capacity constraints on Thursdays and Fridays, which have been gone because of COVID. But like I said, I strongly suspect we'll come back and come back worse. Like I said, particularly because I think we're going to have a lot more Burlingame residents who are home on Thursdays. And maybe they'll come back even on Wednesdays because people are home and they want to go downtown to lunch. I think there's a view that maybe people will drive less. And I hope that's true. I very much hope that's true, but I also, you know, my Uber back from SFO last night cost $60. So I don't, if people are counting on everybody Ubering around Burlingame and not driving into downtown, that calculus may change too. So, you know, I don't know of a plan for the times of when our capacity is at its worst. I don't know of a plan to just easily replace those 70 spots. I think the hope is that obviously the parking garage, which adds net new spaces, will help. And I believe it will, but I don't think it'll entirely do the job. I think some people just aren't going to drive to the 5th floor of the new parking garage. And we're going to really miss those spaces. So that's why I'm so overly conservative when it comes to losing parking on Chapin, losing parking now, you know, on East Lane, and with these parklets. And look, we can always put parklets back if we feel like we're not using the spaces. We could put them back, But we're, we could find ourselves going into the first holiday season for these retailers after being down for a year. We could put things at a real disadvantage if we don't leave enough space. I really worry about October and November when we take out Lot E, if we don't make sure there's enough space downtown. And by the way, we're not doing pedestrians any favors with that either. I mean, creating a lot of people circling, looking for spots is dangerous. It's probably one of the most dangerous things we can do to traffic. So, as you can see, I kind of have a strong view on this, and it's probably born of Vice Chair Martos and I walking around downtown and taking counts a couple of years ago and seeing just how bad it was when it was bad.
Thank you. I just wondered, if there had been another plan that I just wasn't aware of to supplement that, those parking spots that will be lost. So thanks.
Are there any other comments? Mr. Granian, you've been so patient tonight. I said you'd have a second bite of the apple if you wanted one. But also if there are any other commissioners with comments.
I'll comment after public comment, please.
Okay. Mr. Granian, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all the comments that I heard, and it's a tough decision for everyone to make. No one wins in this situation, so we can't please everybody, but we have to do what's best for all the businesses and also our customers. Without our customers, we can't pay our bills. So we need all the parking spaces available to attract customers to shop, wine, and dine on Broadway. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Granian. Commissioner Lee?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I agree. We need to be very mindful. And that's why I don't think we should have a blanket one-size-fits-all solution to this. I think the first ones we could phase out are the orange barricade, the simple, cheap, non-invested parklets that really don't add much to our charm or make us a destination. But there are parklets that cost tens of thousands of dollars that add a lot to the community and are full a lot and save the restaurants and continue to help the restaurant make up the money they lost. And so I think the ones that are the much nicer parklets, and they are a less than 50% of them, are the ones we should work with the owners and see what we can do. If they can give up one of the stalls, possibly, but most of them built it out with a physical structure, with roofs, with windows, with heaters, with electricity. And I think they add to the community more than one parking space or the $9 a day we get in parking fees. But I think the orange ones we could start to phase out, but work with the owners on the others and devise some plan to be respectful of them and realize that they are a draw to the community from outside the community. Thank you.
Well, okay, so the Economic Development Subcommittee is meeting next week. So Mr. Wong, I don't know if you could give us some guidance. I mean, for the best way for us to sort of share with them, and I don't know that we're unanimous here. It sounds like we're at least, I'll say we're on a spectrum. We're not totally black and white, but we're on a spectrum in terms of our views. What's the best way to share with the Economic Subcommittee kind of the views of the TSPC on this, and make sure that they at least have our kind of point of view as they consider this?
Mr. Chair, can I have a point of order? I think
Sure.
Commissioner Rebellos has his hand up before we go to Mr. Wong.
Commissioner Rebellos, my apologies. I did not see that.
No worries.
Thank you, Vice Chair Martos. I'm sorry for not seeing that, Commissioner Rebellos.
I wanted to find out if there's a way or if there's a plan or to do a formal survey of the citizens and of the business owners and what it is they want.
Through chair, and maybe Mr. Sanfilippo can work with me on this. I believe the economic subcommittee will have businesses attending and they will get their opinions. But as far as like a survey monkey to the whole community, I don't believe that's been done. But yeah, I mean, that's why we have council members too as well, because it's the fiscal part of it that they have to evaluate.
And Mr. Wong, remind us again, the subcommittee is which council members on the subcommittee?
That would be Councilmember Brownrigg and Councilmember Ortiz.
Okay.
What we can do, I mean, there's two ways of doing, I'm sorry, Commissioner Revelos, did you have anything else, or was that your main comment?
Well, I just wanted to thank Mr. Kavranian for his comments. I mean, I think they're very insightful, and it really made me think, I mean, really, this is up to the business owners and to their consumers, right? If the businesses can show that there's a demand, and if the people who are going to patronize these businesses show that they want this ability to have outdoor dining or some experience, utilizing parklets, then that means that there's something to talk about. And if everyone says no, I mean, then it's an open and shut case, right? So that's just kind of how my mind is thinking. And I think Mr. Kavranian did a great job of giving a retailer's perspective on this.
And speaking of Mr. Kavranian, I see he has his hand up again. So Mr. Kavranian, did you have
I'm
any?
able to put it down.
Oh,
there we go. Through the chair, as far as how we approach the meeting, it's we can send you all an agenda. It starts, I believe it's 8:15 on the 14th. Mr. Sanfilippo and I also have taken some notes, but I mean, kind of the gist is we don't need all the parklets, and this is where you start splitting a little bit is fees. Do they? Are the ones that wish to remain, should they be paying a fee? I believe that's some of the discussion that they'll be having, because at this point, yes, the city is losing revenue. It was promised till September, and they need to find a way to work with that. And so that maybe that's going to be a point of discussion. And then the other concern I think all the commissioners have is the loss of parking, and what happens on those lunchtime Thursday, lunchtime Friday, where, even in the future, we don't have Lot E in the evenings, or it doesn't matter in the evenings, you can find space. And I think that's where you guys all share. So the only really point of not uncertainty or split, I won't say uncertainty, is the fees.
Does anyone, just to see if I can forge a consensus here, and I may not be able to, but the idea that, well, there's some high value parklets where there's big capital investments and they're high utilization that we'd like to see spared. And even I probably could, there's at least one parklet for one restaurant. I'm like, it's one parking space and it helps a lot. Generally though, I tend to feel like they're going to need to get phased out. But is there some consensus around, look, if we had a fairly substantial fee for using these parklets, would that do the work that all of us want to see, which is that if there's a really high value one, the restaurant would pay for it, and the other ones would just naturally go away because the restaurants are highly unlikely to pay for it. Would we have a consensus around that? Obviously we can't engineer the precise fee, but my sense of it, which people could disagree with, is it should be high. The externality of taking a parking space away for prime shopping season, I don't care about the revenues. Like someone said, it was $9 a day. That's very easy to fix. You can charge the restaurant for the $9. They're not going to care about that. I mean, the problem is the externality, and what fee do you charge for that? It should be substantial. So I wonder if there is a consensus around that point. Commissioner Rebelos and Commissioner Lee, I see your hand up. I think Commissioner Rebelos's hand was up first, although he just took it down. So,
No, I took it down because I thought you were calling on me.
okay. Yeah, go ahead then.
I absolutely think it should be fee-based, and if I was going to, I'm not recommending how that should be done because I don't think that's my role at this point. But I think it should be fee-based, and I think some of the things that should be considered are what the market rate is per square foot, and what the meter would generate annually. Those would be my comments.
Commissioner Lee.
Thank you. I do think we should be charging a fee, but I also think we need to somehow include the amount of investment that the restaurant put into it as part of the formula, and that should be part of it. If it's one of those orange ones where the umbrellas are falling apart and don't have roofs and don't have heaters, they should be treated differently than the high investment ones. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. I mean, my view is, if the fee should be commensurate with what the fees to Commissioner Rebelos' point, I suspect that the going market rate for this real estate would be very high. Downtown Burlingame real estate at market is very high. And if we're giving up these parking spaces, we should be thinking about rates that are, I mean, again, this is going to be for other people to figure out, but I would say it should be high. No one should be using this space unless they can really demonstrate high value. And if the investments that have already been made, I would suspect would be baked into that. So we haven't heard from Mr. Sanfilippo. It might be helpful for him to just share his thoughts before we close this.
Through the chair then, thank you, Commission, for having me tonight. To Commissioner Rebelos's point about a formal survey, we did several during the earlier months of the pandemic, but a new one has not been envisioned, but we could certainly look into that. Many of your comments will be, I assume, rediscussed at the July 14th subcommittee meeting due to the nature of the discussion, and Mr. Wong and I will be in attendance. At the August 16th council meeting, the city council will be discussing whether or not they would like to support parklets long-term to begin with, and then they'll also be presented with a decision tree if they would like to support them long-term. Should there be a fee structure, and if there should be a fee structure, in what way would this be structured? And we can include your comments in that staff report for the their discussion of support for of long-term support. So I hope that is helpful. If you have any further questions, feel free.
That's all helpful for me. Any further comments before we close this? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. We can move on to item 7.
Thank you, Chair Wetton. The Engineer Division staff reports, just give you a quick update. California Drive Bike Facility, we presented you concepts at last month's meeting. And we will be returning, just due to timelines, I think we hope to return next month to get you back in front of you, including Commissioner Israel, who didn't see any of it, but she will get to have a bite at that. Broadway grade separation, again, this is, I won't say stalled, but we are trying to work with the Caltrain on how to present these value engineering options to council. And again, some of them are significant, so we want to make sure that council's fully vetted on the impacts of that. So that's where we're at that.
Mr. Wong, can I
Yes.
just interject on that?
Absolutely.
How much is the timing of the infrastructure bill in Washington a factor here? I mean, does the city need to try and have some more than less definite plans for this to have improve its chances of maybe getting funding that way?
So we applied again this year for the infra grant. And we just found out within, I guess, the past couple of weeks that we were not successful. And that's, I can't remember the numbers, but that's something we've been working on. That's one of the larger pots we were hoping for. And we're just kind of have to look and see, we have to reevaluate. And we asked for a big chunk. And when we looked at the amounts that were given out as part of that, we would have been the top dog. So we're looking at maybe we asked for more smaller bites. But that's something, Powers positions higher than me will be discussing, but yes, we are very active in that because right now it's kind of prime as far as trying to get something in, and if it's not this year, next year we will again reapply. But we've invested a lot towards going into this grant, so I think we will continue that. But I mean, we're hoping for it. And part of the discussion was the last time round a year ago, when things were different, we probably weren't going to be successful, but we wanted to at least get the process in, and then we'll find out more soon. I think we're going to get a debrief. The director is going to get a debrief on how that grant went. So that's where that's at. Does that kind of cover?
Well, I was asking more along the lines of the infrastructure bill that's going to come, and whether there was going to be any potential for earmark funding, and whether having a more definite proposal would help us along those lines. But
I mean, we've submitted for this. The director, he's actually spoken to folks, and we're trying any avenue we can on that. So whatever comes out of the infrastructure bill, we're hoping to get a piece of it, but we'll see where it lands. We're trying to work with the elected officials higher up than our own to do that.
Right.
Sorry, just to continue on the Burlingame station. You saw where we're at that. We'll get back with you on that in the future. Hoover school pedestrian improvements. Hopefully you haven't gone up there because I believe we've got some closures up there, but they started work this week. Apparently, I haven't gone up there myself, but I talked to the project manager on that. He says it's been going pretty smooth. So anything that we've come across, we've managed to adjust and work with the residents up there. So if you have any questions on that, but we're hoping to get that all done before school starts. So Broadway pedestrian street lighting, again, contractual or agreement issue. So we're going out to bid again on that. Hopefully this is the last time. We're still within our window because we got that 2-year extension, but hopefully that gets ironed out. The old Bayshore project, we'll be coming back. I'm sorry, I missed this one, but we'll be coming back to you with that hopefully next month as well. We're going to show you the results of the survey that we just completed, and then give you a look and walk you through the improvements the options that we looked at. Okay, Highland Avenue parking garage. We got a little bit on that. PG&E's completed the installation. It's got power. They're working on some of the life safety issues, the elevator, hooking those up. And then we are working with fiber to install signs, I guess, parking feedback signs that how many spaces are available in that lot, and whether when you're driving down Park or Lorton to turn into it, or I'm sorry, Highland or Park, turn into it or continue on and look for parking. But again, long-term parking is as we've talked about, is earmarked here. We opened up parking on Howard to short-term, so hopefully that gives us some more capacity than we didn't have before. And again, we'll monitor the garage once it's open. I mean, again, through the commission, they wanted to fill that thing up. So we will do what we can to make sure that if it's not full, we somehow get more cars there. And we're not talking 1 or 2 spaces. We're looking for, big groupings of that. Again, City of San Mateo's Peninsula Overcrossing, they're just working on the environmental document. And once we get that, there'll be a time to comment on that. And hopefully we'll get that to you once they find out. Lion Hope, again, we have the community survey that's just been completed, or folks have been sent out. Again, these improvements are going to remain in place for a year, and then we will come back to and reevaluate and see if we can move on to phase 2 or what we need to do to tweak. One that's left off here, very important for you guys to know, is and I think Chair Wet knows this one, but the El Camino Real Renewal Project. So next week, there's going to be 2 public meetings, one virtual. If you go on the city's website, that should direct you to that. I'm sorry, if you look up the El Camino Renewal Project, there should be directed towards that. There's on the 16th from 5:30 to 7:30, there is a virtual presentation. And then hopefully this is more getting back to Steph, on the 16th, there'll be an in-person presentation and workshop at Burlingame High at the same time, 5:30 to 7:30. So sorry that wasn't on here, but that is, something you're all very interested in. So with that, if you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Just also note there was a mailer that at least I received for those as well. People should.
Okay. I believe, Commissioner Lee?
Yeah, thank you. My question was, where at Burlingame High is the meeting? Like what room? Do we know?
I do not know that. I do not have that. I'm sure as you approach the high school, they will have they should have signs up directing you to that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair Whitten.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wong. I think we could go to item 6B. I'm sorry, 7B, which is Police Department reports.
Hi, Commissioners. How are you all? Don't know if you had a chance to look at the report. There are 2 that I wanted to highlight, and then any that you would like to discuss, we could discuss. The first being there was a major injury collision on Arcway and El Camino Real that involved a vehicle pulling out from Arcway, failing to yield to the traffic on El Camino. But this was unique because it was at like 5:58 in the morning, so there just wasn't much traffic at that time that those 2 vehicles found each other, causing more than a minor injury. And the other was a vehicle bicycle collision on California and Carmelita. A bicyclist was traveling northbound on California, and another vehicle passed the bicyclist. They didn't actually make contact, but the bicyclist did not give enough of a buffer, like a 3. The California vehicle code says you have to give bicyclists like a 3 feet buffer when you're passing them. Didn't do that. So just passed a little too closely, which unsteadied the bicycle and causing the bicyclist to fall, to crash, to fall, which we found the motorist at fault in. And what else was on here? Those were the ones that I found that you'd probably most likely want to discuss. The first one that's listed, 1145 Broadway, that was in a private property. I think that was Walgreens, but they backed into a fire hydrant. But if there's any of the other ones you'd like to talk about, or if you want me to elaborate more on the other 2.
At least for speaking for myself, Sergeant Pernin, I think you guessed well in terms of the one I would want to ask you about, which was the Carmelita one. So I appreciate that. Did any other commissioners have questions? Okay.
Just a comment that it seems like there are far fewer incidents this month than usual. Usually it seems like there's a much longer list, which is a good thing.
That's true, but I don't know if that could be attributed to, I think that just, yeah, I think it just happened that way. Luckily there was definitely fewer injury accidents this month, or in June, I should say, because we're a month behind. So,
Well, or people just, everyone left town, myself included. I made Burlingame safer by leaving, maybe. Well, I appreciate you hanging in so late with us, Sergeant Perna, and thank you for the report. And I think with that, we can proceed to item 7C. Well, that's farmer's market. I did say, I noted in the minutes from last month's meeting that I would that we would start exploring actually returning to the farmer's market after a pretty long hiatus. But I don't have any specific details. I guess I suppose there's probably some homework to be done around this. So I can take as an action item as chair to reach out to our favorite former commissioner, Commissioner Launder, to see if there's good opportunities and if the CEC is doing anything yet now that things are reopening. I hope our new commissioners would like to join us. I guess I'll just take 10 seconds to educate our new commissioners. So it used to be pre-COVID that we would once a month-ish have a table at the farmers market that we would share with the Citizens Environmental Council and just be available to the public to take any questions, put out our brochures, get input. It's obviously a practice that went by the wayside because of COVID and also because of the retirement of Commissioner Launder, who always spearheaded that because he was also an active participant in the CEC. So I think it would be a good thing to return to. Now, I think this is the time, but I probably should go back and talk to Commissioner Launder and do some coordination. And at the next meeting, I'll see if we can get some volunteers to actually sit in and take some time slots. So I'll leave it at that for now, and we could move on to item 7D, TSPC Chair and Commissioners Communications. Does anybody have any specific communications that they'd like to share? Okay.
I had from a friend.
Please proceed, Commissioner Lee.
Let me read it. So my friend texted me on Tuesday. Just witnessed a guy crash his bike pretty seriously in front of me on Rollins. His tire got stuck in the rain gutter. He hit his chest on the handlebars and his head on the pavement, at least a broken nose and concussion. We hope we can get better bike lanes soon. So that was on Rollins. I was hoping staff could go out and look at the rain gutters in front of the new Anson Apartments is where it occurred. And they are parallel with the roadway instead of perpendicular. So the tires got stuck in that. Was that reported? It'd be nice if we could go out and try to switch the rain gutters along Rollins so that they are perpendicular so your tires don't get stuck in there. Any thoughts on that?
Through the chair, actually, Sergeant Perna made me aware of that earlier today, and we've already tried to issue a work order with the courtyard to either replace the grate, and you are correct, that grate, typically on our resurfacing projects, when we go out, we look at what grates are out there, and if they are that way parallel with the road in line, which they shouldn't be, because obviously this very instance, a road bike with narrow road tires, they can get stuck in those grates. We replace them. This is one that we were not aware of, but we will either replace the grate or typically what's also does, they can weld metal straps going the other direction to make that. So the courtyard is aware of that, and they will hopefully be able to get out there sometime soon and do one or the other.
All righty, thank you.
I had one communication, and I don't want to get into the specifics of it to protect privacy, but it involved garbage collection and usage of parking spaces to put people's cans out. The person didn't come to give public comment tonight. I think they had some interest in giving it last month. But I'll just reserve comment. We'll see what surfaces, and I'll circle back with the city attorney and see if anything's developed. I ended up learning, before I went on vacation, I ended up learning a bit about our city code when it comes to trash collection. But I'll leave that there. Okay, well, with that, why don't we move to Mr. Wong, are you trying to interject? You're on mute. Mr. Wong.
Commissioner Rebellis has his hand up.
Commissioner Rebellis has his hand up, and I do, maybe we can talk after this meeting to find out a little bit more about that, because I had a similar instance, but I just want to double check and see if it's the same person that we've tried to address.
All right, let's circle up tomorrow, just because it's getting late tonight.
Sure, no problem.
All right, Commissioner Rebellis, please proceed. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. I think it's
No
your
worries.
background, your hand.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. No worries. Thank you. I appreciate it. I just wanted to see if there was any, if there's been any activity on the crosswalk timers at Truesdale and Magnolia.
Through the chair, we're about to start that because we had to wait to get our signal maintenance contract updated. It just happened, the new fiscal year began, so we're working on that. And once we get that, that's one of their first items to go out and chase, so to speak.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can proceed to subcommittee reports. I guess the first one up is downtown parking. Nothing to report. I think we're sitting tight. Obviously, we're waiting for some developments with the garage. It might be a good idea to attend that economic subcommittee meeting is what I'm thinking. So we'll leave that there. Broadway parking, Commissioners Lee and Israelit. Broadway parking and traffic issues, excuse me.
We could just call it Broadway issues.
Broadway issues, exactly. Thank you, Lynn.
I missed the last meeting, but Commissioner Lee and I had met. Did you guys talk about that last meeting? At all about our discussion, Commissioner Lee, and like the objectives and sort of points of action that we came up with?
I think I did. I know you emailed staff our list of suggestions. Have you heard anything?
No, not yet. So maybe it would make sense for us to meet with Mr. Wong. Does that make sense to go over those things, Mr. Wong? Or like, what do you think the next step would be after our little summary and foray into the issues we're facing?
Through chair, I do have the list, and I forwarded to Mr. Sy, and I'm just waiting a little bit on the Broadway to see how those value engineering items iron out, and then I'll forward it to them there, because again, some of these are design related on theirs and they're big ticket items, and I will see those. But Mr. Sy is again working on the park, I won't say parking, but the parking removal on California North of Broadway and some other items to try to, I mean, all this is about trying to facilitate traffic through that intersection. So.
Okay, thank you. Yay.
Thank you.
Okay. School traffic, I believe I reported on the walk through we did last month in terms of the walk we did with the larger group watching dismissal at BIS and Lincoln.
Yes, right. So there was a school BIS school audit.
Yeah.
And
walk, that's right. Yeah.
And which was sort of brought by the city and the Rusty Hopewell before his departure. Unfortunately, he's not, his position was eliminated, sorry. There is a report, also Ms. Beatty and Benito Velasquez were involved, and there were a few, well, actually many really great suggestions for how to make that entire area more safe. And Leisha is also CC'd on that. So Mr. Wong, was the next step then for the city to take a look at the report from the consultants and then bring it to our group as a whole, or where do we go from here now that we've received the consultant's summary?
That's a good question. We haven't I mean, Ms. Maya and I have looked at it and we've talked about, I think we responded back to the Parisi, the consultants, about, and we needed some clarifications because a couple of the items are like, what are you looking for here? I mean, we can, if that's the desire of the commission, we can talk about it with the chair and vice chair if you like to add that. We could discuss at item 9, but yeah, we could absolutely do that.
I was going to suggest that maybe we just pick this up in terms of, I mean, I was going to say it at item 9, but let's just get it out of the way. I would like to maybe bring that back. It seems like particularly at BIS, there's some thought required for how we could orient traffic flows to ameliorate a lot of what we saw. It seems like a really good thing to bring back, but obviously I'd want to know from city staff, how much lead time you need and when you'll be ready to do that. And if
you get to make a nifty PowerPoint, I'm sure, Mr. Wong. We don't want to overload you with too many assignments.
I haven't been getting to do those lately, so.
Yeah.
Consultants have taken my thunder, but yeah, that's something we can talk about. And so when you're ready, sorry, continue on the agenda. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. No, yeah, I just think that's, as far as school traffic is concerned, I think that's the big item for us, right? Which is seeing what the consultant comes back with and rethinking some of the traffic flows, which would be a big deal. I mean, if we were to start to think about one way and real redirection of traffic flows, I think it's the area where we're in the most need of improvement when it comes to school traffic. I think things are.
It's complicated, right? It's complex.
Yeah, very complicated. There's probably more than one option, right? And we'll a lot to consider and sift through. So, okay, citywide transportation alternatives. There has been sort of Commissioner Rebelos, I'll let you expand on this, but there's been some preliminary communication with one potential provider, and we talked a bit about it.
Right. Yeah. And so nothing has happened. So since we spoke, yes, there was one potential provider that reached out and was asking for some input and some feedback about what potential use cases were in Burlingame and maybe some guidance. So we discussed it in our committee. And after that, I actually was on holiday, so I really didn't have any further communication with them. But I do have a conversation that I'm going to have with them in the next couple of days. And essentially what I'm going to do there is I'm going to just point them in the direction of communicating directly with staff or city, perhaps the business improvement district or the Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry, it's getting late. I'm very tired. But but basically, yes, there's some communication there. That was essentially it, though. There hasn't been much else. We were going into the break, so we kind of didn't have much else to talk about, I don't think, at the moment. I was actually looking at my phone just before you called on me, trying to even figure out when we had that conversation. It was, I think, like the week before, right?
We spoke before I left town, which was
Right.
a little over 2 weeks ago, or about 2
Okay.
weeks ago. And I know that there was like a hanging conversation with them, and my point was they just need to explain to us what their model is, like who's paying
Right.
what, they're obviously not going to do it for free. So how do they, and then we could, to your point, pass that along to the city and figure out, whether it makes any sense. Who wants to consider it. Since we already had kind of a BPAC coverage, well, actually, Commissioner Rebelos and Lee, did you want to weigh in on the BPAC, not the BPAC, Community Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory matters? All right, not hearing anything. Why don't we go to future agenda items? We hit one big one. Mr. Wong, are there any others that we should map in?
Like I mentioned earlier, I think just because of timelines, Old Bay Shore, bringing that to you. California Bike Facility will be bringing back to you. Again, Broadway's not off our radar. We're just trying to fit in and make sure our meetings don't go till midnight. But then the BIS walking audit, we will bring those up. So those are 4. And there's a couple other items. I'll speak with you, just smaller ones, but we can talk on those offline. They're more residential, single resident request type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
President Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Lee.
Thank you. We were going to talk about the lighting along California Drive, about turning the lights, the street lights. Has that been discussed at all? About turning them so they are actually over the crosswalks and the bike lanes instead of out over the middle of the street? Have those been looked at?
Through the chair, they
Yes.
have. After last meeting, because I wanted to go out at night, and so I took a lot. Those are on wood poles, and typically those luminaires lights on wood poles aren't maintained or owned by the city. Those are PG&E. So I'll have to try to follow up with them if that's possible. And so that makes it a little more difficult on this end. And we've been having lots of dealings with PG&E with the garage, and they're not, well, they've got there are other things they're worried about.
Okay. Okay. Before I adjourn, did anybody else have anything else they wanted to see addressed? And you can always contact me one-on-one if you think there's an agenda item you're looking for. Okay. With that, I'm going to adjourn 10:12. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. Get some rest, Howard.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye all.